That sounds fun. That sounds fun.
Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of That Sounds Fun. I'm your host, Annie F. Downs. I'm so happy to be here with you. Before we dive into today's conversation, I want to tell you about one of our incredible sponsors. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. If your kids are back in school this month, or August just brings around some new scheduling rhythms for all of us who ever went to school, or you're in a new small group, remember to make space for prioritizing your mental health too. Y'all know how much therapy and counseling has been a game changer for me, and I believe it can be that for you too. If you've been considering therapy, or it's just time to go back now that summer schedules are over, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, super convenient, flexible to your schedule. Plus, getting started is so easy. You just fill out a quick questionnaire, which we love a quiz, and you'll be matched with a licensed therapist. Plus, you can switch therapists anytime at no extra charge, so that makes sure you find the right match for you. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/thatsoundsfun today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/thatsoundsfun. Today on the show, you are in store for a fun one. I get to talk with my friend, Demi-Leigh Tebow. We've had her husband, Tim Tebow, on a couple of times now, but this time we finally get to have Demi here on That Sounds Fun. She was just with us at the Ryman on Sunday, too. If you were there, you know it was so much fun. She is such a treat. Demi is a sought-after speaker, philanthropist, and the former Miss South Africa and Miss Universe. Yes, we talk about it. Today, we get to talk about her brand new book, A Crown That Lasts, and lots of stories about her life that I don't know if you've ever heard before. We really dig in. This is an inspiring episode that I think you're going to love getting to share with your friends. So here's my conversation with my friend, Demi-Leigh Tebow.
That sounds fun.
Demi Tebow, welcome to That Sounds Fun.
Thank you. I just totally missed my protein shake. It's like,
No, did you? I totally missed you doing. Oh, hilarious. We can start over, or we'll just let it be. This is it. This is the real thing. This is it.
I'm happy to be here, Annie. How are you?
I'm so glad to see you. What a treat. I'm so glad we're getting to do this. People are hearing this the week after we were live at the Ryman, which is the best. So thank you for coming to the Ryman Auditorium.
You kidding me? I am so
grateful.
Honored to be invited. What are you thanking me for, girl? I'm just
Listen, anytime someone gets on a plane for someone else, I am thankful. Whenever our friends do this for each other and fly, I mean, y'all do this all the time for people with the Tim Tebow Foundation, with her song. I mean, people say, hey, will you come and talk about it? And you go, put me on a plane and I will do it. So thank you. I'm really grateful.
I'm honored to be there.
Now, this is our 10th year of the podcast. That's what we are celebrating. And your husband has been on the show multiple times. Your mother-in-law has already been on the show. So I'm just working my way through the Tebow family.
I'm just excited to join them in the author club.
That's exactly right. Oh, my gosh. And
I have some catching up to do.
I cannot wait to talk about the book. The first question we are asking this year, since it is the 10th anniversary, is because it's called That Sounds Fun, tell me what sounds fun to you. What does Demi Tebow do for fun?
My word, Annie, right now, nap sounds fun.
Yeah, I bet.
A nap sounds fun. You know what it takes writing a book. A lot of really long nights. A nap sounds really fun. You know, like a perfect day would be get up, get my cup of coffee, go throw the toy in the pool for my golden, like exercise him, take the other two for a walk, and then like go play some pickleball. And then come home, like eat a good, like just fresh salad, like grilled chicken meal, maybe take a nap then.
Yeah.
Honestly, that sounds like such a nice day right now.
Agreed.
I haven't had any of those just yet. So maybe once this book is on shelves, maybe I can do that.
Yeah, that's right. And it's August. It'll still be hot in Florida for a while. You've got like 4 more months to do those outside things. Okay, now you and Tim are very health conscious, which I love about you. But in your morning,
that's who I am.
I've seen you cooking on the internet, ma'am. You do a lot of healthy, like add an avocado here. So do you put anything in your coffee in the morning? Are you like a protein powder in your coffee?
I do.
I know. I do the same. I'm like, that's like a free 20 grams just for showing up.
Yeah.
It's so easy.
I load up that collagen powder because it mixes really well with your coffee. And I have the collagen powder and then just unflavored. 18 grams of protein right there.
That's it.
It's hard. I feel like eating the amount of protein that I feel like I need.
Yeah.
You have to find some supplements. So yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I'm the same way. I'm like, I'll take that grilled chicken on the salad, but also if I can just knock out that first set of grams of protein in my tea in the morning, why not?
No coffee.
I don't drink coffee, dude. I wake up like this. Can you imagine?
Oh, that's fair.
Me on coffee? Nobody. Absolutely nobody. Also, this is as close to Florida gear as I've ever worn, by the way. I thought of you this morning because I went to University of Georgia. And do you know, I was at Georgia while Tim was at Florida.
Oh my. Okay. Yes, I do. I actually think I know that. Wow.
Yeah. So the idea that our friendship has happened after those years is really a testament to the Lord that God is bigger than SEC football. But so I just want you to know, I changed dresses this morning when I got dressed because I was like, that one is almost blue and orange. And that is a Tebow level commitment of friendship.
That's a really big deal for a bulldog.
You know it, girl.
I mean,
you
wow.
know it. That's exactly right. Okay, so let's
work after all. Annie.
That's right. Okay, so your book is coming out this week. I want you to back up a little bit. So many of our friends listening want to write a book. Your book, A Crown That Lasts. First of all, it's excellent. But tell me when you wanted to write. When did you want to turn your story into a book versus you could have done a podcast series. You could have done probably a documentary. What made a book the right thing for you?
Annie, you know what? I don't necessarily know a book versus a podcast, or I've always loved writing. I genuinely have. My 12th grade teacher would be so proud of me. I need to send her a copy because she just instilled such a love for writing in me from a young age, and I'm thankful for her. Like I was like the girl that loved writing the essays, and so I've always loved writing. I think I've thought about writing a book for a couple of years. I think I've been able to gain a lot of life experiences even at this age. My last year in my 20s.
Girl.
And I started writing this book a couple of years ago, and I realized I had to stop because I hadn't grown enough at that time. I hadn't necessarily seen the purpose. I had the stories, I had the experiences, but I didn't know what the purpose was of a lot of them. I started writing this book really when I was in a waiting season that really just felt like a wasted season. Of course, in that moment, I couldn't see that waiting season actually set me up for maybe a winning season later on, right? Love a little alliteration there.
Good, yeah.
Write that down.
Yeah, that's right. You should.
And anyway, I stopped writing, and I picked up my MacBook last year in the 17th of July, and I started writing this book, and I wrote it in 3 months. I handed in my manuscript 15th of October, and it's one of those things that just felt, I think Nelson Mandela says, it always feels impossible until it's done. And it really felt like one of those things, writing a book, somehow coming up with 70,000 words to write about. But I really just feel like the Lord had given me such a clear message that I wanted to share. And I was just ready to write it. And it I don't know, in a way it felt easier than I think I expected. Not that it wasn't hard. A lot of the chapters, I feel like I really just was vulnerable in the book and was honest more than anything. And some of those chapters were hard. The first chapter I wrote was about my sister. I was in South Africa when I started writing the book, and I wanted to write the chapters that really kind of happened in South Africa while I was there.
Wow.
And that was hard because I realized, Annie, even thinking I have worked through losing my little sister and have worked through her death and even just the purpose of her life, I realized when I actually started putting it into words that there was so much that I still needed to work through and pray through and really come to grips with. My sister was born with severe special needs and a lot of disabilities, and her life just sent me spiraling into having all these why God questions, Annie, that I know I'm never going to have the answer to, not until I get to heaven one day and get to be face to face with my maker. 1 Corinthians 13:12 tells us, now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we will know fully, just as we are fully known. And I I had to come to grips knowing that if I'm going to continue asking God why, that means that I'm going to continue questioning him for the rest of my life. And instead of asking him why, I started asking him where. Like, Lord, where are
Oh,
you?
wow.
And that was very helpful for me because I think when you ask why, you're questioning, but if you ask where, you're seeking. You're saying, show me, like, where are you in this? Where do you want to use me in this?
Wow.
So anyway, that was something that I think that the book writing it allowed me to figure out.
I mean, start asking where, not why needs to be like, someone is pulling over and taking notes right now. Someone is like, I need to start asking where and not why. Because I think tell me if this feels true to you. There are times where I don't even ask why, because there's this cognitive knowledge of like, you don't get to ask God why. Like that doesn't tend to get a response that you want. And so instead of switching to where, I just switch off and I just move on. Whatever. I'm never going to understand whatever. And I think what you're doing is such a healthier response of like, no, don't stop, but move forward into where. Instead of why to an exit, go why to a where. And that is really helpful.
Oh. Well, Annie, not after we lost my sister, during like a really hard period in my sister's life, she was born without her cerebellum, which is your small brain. And long story short, it like basically regulates and correlates your whole nerve and muscular system. So anything that requires muscle usage, she didn't have any control over it. That's like, imagine like swallowing, like holding something, anything that required muscle usage, she didn't have control over. She also suffered from severe seizures, like at one point had like 42 in a 24-hour period. Like it was really hard, really hard. And my dad and I are very close. My dad grew up in a Christian household, grew up in the church. I grew up in two Christian homes. My parents are divorced, but grew up in two Christian homes. I knew the Lord from a young age, and had gone to church, and so was my dad. And being very close with my dad, he, like my sister's life, sent him into a spiral of just not being able to come to grips with not having the answers to so many of those why questions. And I think that really affected me. But man, Annie, the Lord showed up in such a kind way for him, and and that totally affected me too. But my dad, my stepmom really wanted to go to Israel, and my dad said, "Well, I'll go with you, but I'm just going with you so you're not by yourself in an unfamiliar country. I'm just going to come to support you." But I don't want to go to any of the sites. I'm staying on the bus. Like, I'm staying at the hotel. Like, I don't want to see anything. Like, I'm just going to be. But, somehow the Lord softened his heart on that trip. And my dad's such a visual person that seeing the empty tomb, walking in the garden, seeing the olive trees, like swimming in the ocean, like all of those things just made it so tangible to my dad. And my dad genuinely came back from that trip a complete changed man. And I think that really impacted me so much as a teenager at that point, seeing how the Lord just showed up in my dad's life. It was kind of a miracle in a big way.
How old were you when your sister passed away?
How old was I it was 2019. So that was, what's that, like 5 years ago? I was 22, 23, if I'm not mistaken. So Tim and I just got engaged. I was based in the US at that point, and my dad called me and told me, hey, Sissy's not doing good. Like, she's in hospital. And that meant nothing because she's been in hospital over and over, like bi-monthly, right? And so at first, like, we didn't necessarily think much of it. But I remember, Annie, my dad called me. I was on the west coast of the US in a small town. It took like 3 flights just to get back to New York, where I lived at the time. And my dad called me and said, hey, like, it's really not going well with Franya. Like, you should see if you can come home. I remember, like, I couldn't get a flight back in time. Like, I missed the last flight to South Africa that day. Like, I couldn't get back. And I remember being on on the first flight, and like there was no Wi-Fi. It's like the smaller planes, and like getting off at the airport and just like calling my dad to check in, and then catching the next flight, and then getting off at the layover. And he was so kind to just allow me to get back into a safe space. And before she passed away, and I wasn't able to fly home until a day or two later. But that was hard to work through that. It's, one of those things that you just couldn't do anything about. It's completely out of your control.
And just flying across the country, across the world, to having to get there in time.
That was hard. So.
Hey friends, just interrupting this conversation to tell you about a brand new kids book I think you are going to love from our friends Kane the Band. Okay, it's called I'm So Blessed, just like their hit song. And it's starring Kane as little pieces of fruit. Y'all, it is so cute. They took the message of their song I'm So Blessed to create a lyrical picture book where kids will read about Logo Lemon, Tay Tay Tangerine, and Maddie Melon through their daily lives as they encounter challenges and frustrations, but learn how to praise God through it all. If kids have breath in their lungs, they can find joy in God's blessings and praise Him by singing the fruit's favorite truth, I'm so blessed. You can order Kane's new book, I'm So Blessed, anywhere books are sold. Listen, all our VIPs got a copy of I'm So Blessed last weekend at the Ryman, and people were reading it and they love it. It is so great. I am putting it in like my new stack of what I give every new little baby that is born. I'm adding this to all my friends' kids' libraries. You can get a copy wherever you love to buy books as well. Okay, now back to our conversation with Demi. When you were talking about writing while you were in South Africa, our mutual friend Lisa Jo Baker is your editor for this book.
Love her. Yes.
Love her. And she's also South African. So talk to me. Did that help you? Like, talk to me about having someone who kind of literally speaks your language, but also like throughout the book, you do mention places and speaking Afrikaans and all these parts of your South African life. Did it help to have an editor who knows South Africa?
Yeah, so much. First of all, the whole team at W is just amazing. I truly am so lucky to be able to work with them. They've made this whole process so fun, Annie, and Lisa has just been there every step of the way. She is an amazing editor. But yes, she is South African. She moved here, I want to say like 20 plus years ago. So, but there's certain ways that we would say things in South Africa that just doesn't necessarily hit here. So He saved me definitely from a lot of jokes that wouldn't have been.
She's like, I get that. Americans will not.
I know what you mean, but nobody else will. So,
what's funny is this story isn't funny, but you write about being carjacked, and it is that is an unbelievable story, Demi. But in it, you say, I ran right up the busy dual carriage lane road. And I was like, dual carriage. Okay, two lanes. Okay, I got it. Now I understand. I was like, she's South African. She's South African.
Well, I also had to go back and Google, because the way trauma works, Annie, you don't necessarily remember all of the details in that moment. And I was like, I thought there were 7 lanes, but apparently there were 2, So Google told me that's what a 2-lane lane.
Yeah, it makes sense. What made you, there are multiple times, again, I'm thinking of our friends listening who are thinking about writing their own books too. Mm-hmm. You tell some really personal parts, particularly of that story, that are really traumatic. How did you decide what stayed and what went? Is that part of the partnership with Lisa Jo? Did you write it much more detail and she said, let's back it up? Or did she ask questions? Was it kind of a dance of getting this story out correctly?
Yeah, I remember one thing Lisa told me was I've never written a book before, so her guidance was super valuable. And, getting to write 70,000 words allows you to really work in a lot of the details. And she really challenged me to go and sit and think back about that moment. And I mean, I could even like remember the guy's like sweaty hand gripping my wrist, and the hoodie, and the smell, and the cars hooting, and just really forced me to kind of go back to that moment. But more importantly than that, Annie, I think the reason I chose to tell this story, and I think I put in a disclaimer at the beginning of this chapter to warn people about what they're about to read, because that was important to me. I never want anyone to be caught off guard. But Annie, me sharing this story where I was carjacked by multiple men and had a gun pointing to my head, since opening up about this, I've had women come to me and say, Demi, I have filed a police report for the first time. Demi, I went and told my mom. Demi, I got out of that abusive relationship. Because you sharing this has shown me that I'm not alone, that there are people that want to help me, that can help me. And, Annie, I was able to escape. I write the whole story in the book, but I was able to escape that situation and ran up that avenue, and nobody stopped to help me. It was broad daylight, peak hour traffic, 5:30 in the afternoon, and nobody would stop to help me. And that was that was more traumatic.
That's what you said in the book, that's more traumatic, that not to be that girl, like that the girl who did stop and help you finally. Yeah. I mean, so many people didn't.
So many people didn't. But Annie, I'm thankful for that girl, not only because she stopped to help me and lead me to a safe place, but I truly believe that she changed a big part of how I viewed my life going forward. And her stopping, leaning over, opening the old little car door for me and letting me to safety made me realize that I don't want to be, for the rest of my life, one of the people that saw but did nothing, that heard but did nothing. And that incident has truly transpired into me learning about the fight against human trafficking, into me starting my Unbreakable conference for women. That has been the catalyst. Till this day, I don't know what my perpetrator's goal was. I don't know what they wanted from me. I don't know if they were there for my car or for me. I don't know. They were never caught, unfortunately. But I do know that incident truly served as a catalyst to me learning about things I didn't know existed in the year 2017. I didn't know human trafficking happened outside of a Liam Neeson movie back then.
Right.
And I think that story is just one of the ways that the Lord has allowed me to somehow turn that pain into purpose for His glory. When we are willing to give that pain to Him, my sister-in-law always says this: if you give that pain to the Lord, He will never waste that pain. He will find a way to use that. And I so resonate with that and feel like that is just so true, especially in that instance.
One of the things you write a lot about in the book is where you find your identity. And how the moment you turned around and gave away your Miss Universe crown, or crowned the next girl, and then you walk back and you're like, what am I supposed to do now?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about our friends that are listening, because I don't know if you know this, but I used to teach elementary school. And the first August that I didn't go back to school was actually really hard, because you're like, well, what am I? If I'm not a teacher, what am I?
Yeah.
And if you weren't Miss Universe, what are you? And there are so many people, pastors' wives who they're no longer at that church, or people who are divorced, and this is the first start of a school year where the kids have 2 addresses, or will you talk a little bit about, I mean, it's even true, you moving from South Africa to the US. When our labels change like that, will you talk for just a minute on what you've learned about, like, how do we grieve and move forward when these labels that we've lived by for a year or a long time are suddenly changed in like a moment for you?
Yeah, I subtitled this book, You Are Not Your Label. And I'm really referring to the labels that I kind of liked wearing, Annie. Like wearing that Miss Universe label wasn't a bad thing. Like being a wife is not a bad thing. Being a mom, being a business owner, it's not a bad thing. But we walk such a tightrope when we root our identity in those things that are temporary. And, our life circumstances make up who we are, right? Like they give such an input into who we grow into becoming. Well, the problem with rooting our identity in our life circumstances is that eventually at some point or another, I don't know about you, Annie, but at least in my life, it sends you on this roller coaster of insecurity, of doubts, of questions, of, not feeling like you're enough, and ending up with those like what's next questions. And I had to go and really realize, like really figure out, okay, I know I'm a believer. I know what Jesus says about me because I have read it in the Bible. I've memorized that scripture. But what do I actually truly like? Where do I root my identity in? If it's not in my life circumstances, if it's not in my Miss Universe crown or sash or my new car or my corner office or, the role I fulfill as a mom, like what is it that I root my identity in? And I realized that if I don't want to keep living a roller coaster of all of these emotions throughout my life, I'm going to have to root that in something or someone rather that is never changing, that is always trustworthy, and that is bigger than myself. And the only answer I could come up with for what to genuinely root my identity in is in my faith, in who God says I am. And, Annie, the Bible is full of the things that the Lord thinks about us. The fact that he thinks about us all the time is to me just so mind blowing and so beautiful in such a way. So that's really what this book is rooted on. If I could give you one verse that has inspired this book, it would be 1 Corinthians 9:25, where Paul writes to the church of Corinth and says, hey guys, like don't go and chase perishable crowns, like go and chase a crown that will last for eternity. And that's what inspired the title too.
Yeah. For our friends listening, there's a thunderstorm in your life happening in the background. So that's what they're, hey, don't apologize. It's the summer in the afternoon. This is how it goes.
I have the Wi-Fi like plugged into the wall.
You're doing great. No, you're doing great. It just sounds like thunder, which is going to happen.
Doors around here, and if somebody would have been my Dalmatian, she's a little.
No, you're great. I mean, Demi, as you're talking about that, one of the things that I think I've learned so far, we've still got a lot of life left, is that the most strategic identity work the Lord does with me is through having an identity ripped away. Has that been true for, like, I don't learn good things about having my identity in Christ when I am working in an identity. It's always when something is being taken away from me. So when those moments have started to come, I have this moment of like, oh, I must care about this more than I realized, or the Lord wouldn't be rooting this out.
Yeah, right. That's so true. I totally resonate with that, Annie. I mean, it was that moment where, like you said earlier, I walked off that stage and I had to give this, like, not a bad thing, this good thing. It wasn't, it wasn't a bad thing, where I had to give that back. And, I know where that started. It started the night I won Miss Universe. My manager came up to me, my brand new manager came up to me, Annie, and she asked me a question that I wish I would have answered differently. And she asked me, and I mean, it was like cute and fun. I crown Miss Universe, and she comes up to me and she's like, grabbed me by the arm and she's like, who are you? And I said like Miss South Africa. And because we were all announced by our countries throughout the competition. And I said, South Africa, and she said, no, who are you? And I said, I'm like literally wearing the crown and the sash that says Miss Universe. So maybe she's asking for my name. I'm like, I'm me. And she goes, no, who are you? And like it clicked, and I was like, oh, I'm Miss Universe. And for the rest of that year, my bags got tagged as Miss Universe. The doorman greeted me as Miss Universe. I was announced as Miss Universe. Yeah. And I kind of stepped into that identity in a big way, Yeah. And then the night came where I no longer was that. And I had no idea really who I was. Yeah. And Annie, that was really the moment where I entered I would say a pretty drastic waiting season, somewhat of an identity crisis of sorts. And it's hard to know that in that moment, to identify that, to really know what's actually happening here. I just feel very confused. But I realized in that time, I was so nervous to tell someone actually, I don't know what's next. So many people would invite me to be on their podcast or to do an interview. And I literally, Annie, like pretended to be my own assistant, like made a different Gmail account.
Yep.
And she was like, Demi's very busy right now. She
Yeah.
will go back in a few months when she's figured it out.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I wouldn't put a name at the bottom because I couldn't fabricate that big of a lie. But I was so fearful to say, I don't know. And I'm okay with that. I'm working through it. You know, I felt like a failure in a big way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Even in the book, you say that after I remember the story so clearly because after you said, I'm Miss Universe, she said, you're Miss Universe, let's go. And she grabs your hand and takes you forward into this photo shoot. And that's so profound because so often the labels that we give ourselves to fully, the people around us are fine with too.
Yeah.
Right. And it isn't all bad. Like you and I are authors. It is not bad to be an author. It is not bad when other people identify us as authors. No. The problem is when we go, if I don't write a book anymore, what am I?
Yeah.
Do I still have worth if I don't do this anymore? And so any of us, not a lot of us are going to win Miss Universe, but we all have titles that if we sit with our journal tomorrow morning and go like, if this got taken away from me, if this thing that people labeled got taken away from me tomorrow, who would I be and what would I feel?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And Annie, nobody really taught me to even think about that or to prepare for that. You know,
wow.
I had all these books, I had all these coaches, I had all these people that taught me how to reach that dream, how to write that book, how to buy that dream car, how to get that corner office, you know, how to apply for that degree. But nobody tells you, well, what now when you actually achieve it too?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Or you work all that way and maybe it doesn't happen. Maybe you don't get that job that you've just gotten the degree and the training and everything you needed. You know, what now? What now when that plan that you had so perfectly prepared doesn't work out?
Yeah.
What do you do next?
Yeah.
And that can be really hard. And, you know, and in that season in my life, I just genuinely didn't have a good community around me. My good community was all back in South Africa. And other than that, I didn't necessarily have friends in my life that cared more about me versus what they wanted or could get from me. Does that make sense? You know, I didn't have a group of people around me that could point me back to the truth, that could point me back to what does Jesus say about me? Does he have a perfect plan for my life? To tell me like, hey, this sucky moment isn't going to last forever. And Tim and I were engaged at that point, but we were doing long distance. He was in the middle of sports. And so, you know, my like highlight of my day was like getting to speak to him on the phone in between his games or his practices.
Right.
And I look back now and I'm like, man, if I had like a good church community, if I had like even just like two good friends that could just point me back to the truth, like how much easier it would have been to walk through that season and to maybe even just put one foot in front of the other. I felt so stagnant in that season. So yeah, I think just, you know, having a good community of people, that's what we've been created to be a part of.
That sounds fun.
And now back to finish up our conversation with Demi.
That sounds fun.
It's interesting hearing you talking about that because you're doing this now as an author, and so many people listening are doing this in their own way of going like, okay, well, I'm trying to go after this goal. I just ran a 5K with two of my cousins, and I've finished a lot of 5Ks, but I've never run one without stopping. But you will run one without stopping when your two cousins are on either side of you and they are not stopping.
So good. Yes, that's right.
And so even as you're talking about, man, people told me how to get there, but they didn't tell me what to do once I was there. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have that community around it. It's so encouraging to think, okay, as all of us listening, and me too, as we are building the next thing, as we are going toward the thing, do we have the people in place who are proud of us but not impressed?
Yeah.
Who are like supportive but are not like impressed. People who are impressed with me it feels good, but it's very temporary.
That's so true. I so resonate with that. I think that's, I had a group of people around me that I tried fitting in with, but fitting in is very different to belonging.
That's such good stuff in the book.
It's not the same thing. When we think about fitting in, Tim does a lot of like sports stuff, football stuff,
Yes.
Bulldog, in the fall. And I sometimes get to travel with him. If I don't, like, we just don't see each other for a weekend.
Right.
So sometimes I get to go on the road with him. And I was sitting at this college campus, actually writing this book. And I was sitting in the coffee shop, and Annie, like, I could see every girl walking in that coffee shop, like, wore the same brand, had the same belt bag, maybe in a different color. I could even tell, like, what the popular drink was to order from the coffee shop, you know, like, and I could just see, like, well, that's going to go out of style. Like, where do you then fit in? If you don't, like, if the belt bag goes out of style, if they take the drink off the menu, like, where do you then fit in? And I then realized, like, fitting in is so different to belonging, because fitting in means we're molding ourselves, we're breaking ourselves. And by the time you do fit in, like, one, you might just look awkward or not like yourself at all. I even think about me trying to fit into my mom's clothes as a 14-year-old. Like, you think you're like boss lady, but you're really just like like an imposter, right?
Right.
But belonging means that you are fully known and fully loved. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you are just fully known and just accepted and you're good and I love you no matter what. No, that means, like, I love you regardless of your imperfections. I love you regardless of the things that aren't necessarily your best. And you know what? I love you so much because I know you, but I love you so much that I am going to choose your best interests and act on your behalf as your friend or as your partner that loves you, that cares about you, and that has your best interests at heart. And I'm going to tell you and challenge you when I think that you can be better, that you can show up, that you can work more. And those are the friends in my life that I know I truly belong with, because when I mess up, they're going to tell me, and they're also going to help me to get back and get better. And so I'd rather belong than fit in.
How did you make those friends in the last, 5-6 years? How do you now have these women, I assume, and some men around you too, probably, that are the real friends? Like, give us a quick lesson on how do we make those kind of friends.
It took time. Tim and I got married a couple weeks before COVID hit. So getting plugged into a church community here in our now hometown was difficult back then. It took time. I think COVID really made that harder, because just go out and meet people and be part of Bible studies or things. But two of my friends, we actually met because we all bonded over dogs.
Oh, perfect. That's great.
So perfect match. And I think it's one of those things where a friend of a friend of a friend, you're all friends because you kind of all have something in common. I think that's really how that happened for me. There was a time where I was friends with all of Tim's friends shortly after we got married. And, I moved my whole life to the US. And Tim and I remember we had this conversation where we said, okay, you have your friends and I have your friends, but now I need my friends and then we need our friends.
Yeah, smart.
And that was something that I really had to work on. Relationships take time. I think Tim actually played a really big role in that. We were I remember my two who now best friends, we were in that dating friendship phase.
Yeah.
Do you want to grab a coffee or, sit in church together? And I think it was my birthday. And I think Tim asked them to go celebrate my birthday with me, or ask if we wanted to do, it's they didn't know if I wanted to be their friend, and I didn't know, but Tim was I'm going to intervene here. So that's why I think sometimes you hear of all these couples that were match made by a mutual friend because it's somebody that loves both of you and that cares both of you. So honestly, two of my best friends, I'll give Tim the credit. He totally had a hand in that.
Yeah. I live part-time in New York and so it's been really interesting because I've started a whole new community of friends there.
Yeah.
And so I've had to do the same, Demi, of being okay, do we really like each other, me and this girl that we're being friends? Like, is this really, I went to an event and my mind was, is there going to be single guys here? Of course that was my mind, Demi. Like, I was like, and then I left with 2 new girlfriends. Like, I left with 2 new girls that I love being pals with. And I was like, this is still a big advantage. I'm not dating anyone from this event, but I've got 2 new friends. And we're doing that, like, so do you like seeing movies? Do you like going to Broadway? Do you like going on walks? And so it is that new thing of like, oh yeah, making new friends where you live. A mutual friend introduced us, just like you said. Yeah. But I had to say yes to that friend going, hey, come to this big thing at Central Park and sit on a blanket with us. And these other 2 girls were on the same blanket.
Yeah. I think, Annie, sometimes it's just as easy as like just asking, just like, hey, do you want to go on a walk? Like, hey, I really enjoyed our conversation. I feel like we have a lot in common. Like, I would love to be your friend. I think sometimes it's okay to be upfront. And, the worst they can say is like, hey, actually, like, I just don't have capacity right now. Or
that's
I don't know who would actually say that, but like, like the worst that can happen is like, I doubt anyone's going to say no. I don't want to be your friend.
That's right.
So I think just being intentional, taking time, actually really listening and trying to know learn what's important to those people. A lot of my friends, like, I play golf, I play pickleball. They're not super into sports, but they figure it out for my sake. And I do the things they like because you compromise.
Yeah. It's really neat. Even when I'm thinking about your book, it's set up so beautifully. You did such a cool job of like every section is summarized. Every section gives you a challenge, gives you some reflection. But it's also such an interesting, as I was reading, I thought you could read this with friends. Like this could be the central thing that you are sharing is walking through this like, hey, I don't want to put my identity in stuff that will change. So let's walk through what seeds I've sown. Let's walk through what I have let grow that is healthy and that isn't healthy. Mm-hmm. And people can help you prune back and then really see the fruit that comes of that.
Yeah. I love that. Annie, the thunder is so loud.
It's so good. It's beautiful.
Hey, thunder, can you just stop for a second? Annie, something that was so important to me is to make that this book is applicable to my readers, and that is it is impactful in their own lives. My hope and my goal with A Crown That Lost is not that they get to learn something about me or my life story, but truly that they get to go and apply it to their own lives and go and just dig up and untangle those messy roots of our identity, go and uproot those maybe weeds of doubt that's been sown way too many times, and to go and plant new seeds of truth in our lives so that we can eventually get to a season where we get to flourish. And listen, in those flourishing seasons doesn't mean that there's not still work that needs to be done. Like that plant still needs to be watered. Like there's still pruning that needs to happen. Like that can still be a little hurtful, right? But in order for you to keep growing and keep moving forward, there are certain things that we need to do and apply in our own lives. And that was really important to me to make that applicable to my readers.
So you're in your last year of your 20s.
Yes.
You have your first book out. Tell me when you're looking into your 30s, what are you hoping for in your 30s? What do you hope that decade holds that your 20s didn't hold?
I'm so thankful for my 20s though, Annie. There really isn't, there might have been like hard seasons, but I think the thing that I'm excited about for the rest of my life, however long the Lord allows me to stay on this planet, is to genuinely just have confidence in knowing what my life's purpose is and to be able to live that out every single day, no matter what that looks like. I think that's the most amount of fulfillment that I ever feel. And it's the safest that I ever feel is when I'm right where I know I'm called to be, whether that means I'm writing a book or I am a dog mom, whatever that means. To know that I am right where God needs me to be right now. And that's the safest place I'll ever be.
I mean, what a treat to go into a new decade with that as the foundation. Like, you get to live all 10 years with the like, Lord, just put me in your purpose. Like, whatever your purpose is right where I want to be. Will you talk for just a minute before we finish? Will you talk about her song just a little bit and tell people about it?
Yes, of course. So, Annie, like I told you earlier, the carjack situation really served as a catalyst to me learning about the fight against human trafficking. And that has just snowballed into learning about online child exploitation and, just faceless victims of child exploitation. And one of the organizations that I get to be a board member of and that I get to serve alongside is Her Song. And it's the Tim Tebow Foundation's Survivor Care Ministry here in the United States, and we serve survivors of human trafficking all around the country. We have different campuses, and one of the campuses is based right here in Jacksonville, Florida, too.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a long-term restoration program where we really walk hand in hand alongside survivors of human trafficking. And it's everything from immediate care, that urgent, kind of 60-day period, to then going into a long-term 1 year plus restoration program. And then we also have a transitional phase. That's very important because, any trauma works in such just crazy ways where we really want to allow our survivors to be able to integrate back into their new lives in a comfortable way. And it's not just a program that you graduate and it's goodbye. No, we really do life together. And, I think we were just at a baby shower for one of our survivors that graduated a couple years ago. And so many of the survivors that have completed the program and are now working and studying full time, they stick around as big sisters to all the women that has come after them. And to me, that is just one of the most beautiful things, one of my favorite nights of the year, other than Night to Shine, which is how Tim and I met through my little sister, the celebration for people with special needs and disabilities. My other favorite night of the year is our milestone event. And we don't call it a graduation ceremony at Her Song. We call it a milestone celebration. And, or in South Africa, I'd say meter stones. Okay. So,
yes, that's what you put in the book is meter stone. Yeah.
Meter stones are set up along the road to show you like how far you've come, and we love celebrating those milestones with our survivors because everybody is in a different phase of life. Everybody's story is different, and we want to meet them right where they are. And so it really is one of my favorite nights of the year. We celebrate those milestones of how far they have already gone and how far they will continue to go. So
it's just incredible. Demi, we've known each other a couple of years now, and I've just loved watching how you have partnered with Tim, but not disappeared. Like you have continued to know what God had called you to, and it matches so beautifully with Tim. It's just, it's been really beautiful to watch. So it just feels like such an honor to have been able to watch y'all grow together and partner together, but still run your own races. It's been really inspirational, truly.
So sweet, Annie. Thank you. Something I'm so grateful for is when Tim and I first met, we didn't have like a ton in common. Our languages were different, our cultures were different. I didn't play any of the sports that he played. He wasn't into pageants and, but those things don't matter. Like we learned how to play golf together. We learned how to play pickleball together. We found the board games that we love together. I got to catch up on watching his favorite movies and he's in charge of the movies in this household. I'll give that over to him. But I feel like the Lord aligned our purpose and our path before we ever even met. The love that I had for people with special needs through my sister and learning about the fight against human trafficking long before we were ever even met. It's just such a beautiful gift to have that in common. I think it's easier to learn what you have in common, but it's harder to learn what you have in purpose.
Yeah. Woo, say that. That is good. That is a good line, Demi-Leigh Tebow. All right, friend, is there anything we didn't talk about that you want to make sure we say?
This was awesome. I just wish I could tone the thunder down a little bit.
Listen,
but
it sounds so comforting. It sounds so much like summer that when our friends who somehow don't listen to this until like October will be like, oh, summer storms. What a good thing to catch on a podcast. So I am thrilled it exists. Thank you for doing this, Demi. I'm really grateful. It was good to have you on. You are welcome back anytime, my friend.
Thank you so much. This is awesome.
Oh, you guys, isn't she awesome? I know. Oh my gosh, some of those stories, y'all, the book is just full of them. This is such a great read. I'm thinking about all the girls going off to college this month, girls that may be entering the workforce for the first time, or maybe your kid's teacher. She would love a copy of A Crown That Lasts. So make sure you grab that. Go follow Demi on social media. Tell her thank you for being on the show. And happy book launch week, Demi. If you enjoyed this episode, I think you'll also really love the episodes with Tim. That's episode 273 and 376. And our episode with Hannah Brown, it's 348. If you have any questions from this episode, just drop them in the Q&A box on your Spotify app if you're a Spotify listener, or send them to our Instagram account, That Sounds Fun Podcast. You're following there, right? Also, there's a new Single Purpose League Instagram account. Make sure you're following that as well. And if you need anything else from me, I'm embarrassingly easy to find. Annie F. Downs, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, anywhere you need me, that's where you can find me. I think that's it for me today, friends. Go out or stay home. Do something that sounds fun to you, and I will do the same. Listen, today what sounds fun to me, speaking of Kane and their new book, Kane is playing this weekend at Dollywood. So I'm loading up and heading to Dollywood, doing a little pre-trip, getting us ready before Single Purpose League heads to Dollywood in December. So I'm heading to Dollywood this weekend. Y'all have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday with one of my favorite pastors, a guy you are going to love. His name is Jack Mooring. So we'll see you back here on Monday.
That sounds fun.
That sounds fun.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Check 1, 2 on the microphone. Annie F. Downs in your car to your home. Every week it's something new. A deep talk or an interview. She'll make you laugh, she'll make you cry. When it's dark out, she's a light. When you're down, get you feeling right. Oh man, that sounds fun.
That sounds fun.
That sounds fun.